when you think, why don't they teach this in schools? Like finance and child development, cooking, sewing, foods, all of those things that are more of like what you would consider home ec, but now has turned into financial responsibilities and insurance and how does sibling rivalry work, or how do we develop better communication? And that's what really drew me in.
Welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone. Welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. Today, I have a beautiful woman and mentor and just someone I've really looked up to over the last year since I met her. And I'm really excited for you guys to hear from her and all the things she's offering. So welcome, Camille.
Hi.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to get into these things. But if you haven't been on my podcast before, the first thing we do is tune in, which helps us and provides a beautiful little pause and space in my listeners' day that a lot of us just don't get. And so what we'll do is tune in. If you're in a place where it's safe to do so, close your eyes. If not, relax your body and come into presence. Feel that next exhale. Draw your jaw down as if it was heavy. And then feel that melt through your neck, your shoulders, until you get to your belly. And then on your inhale, your belly comes out. And on your exhale, your belly presses back. Noticing the 75 trillion cells that make up you in your body as a person, and every one of them is a living miracle with quantum energy that we can be grateful for. Taking just one or two more breaths where the belly goes out and you feel the strength, the gratitude, the miracle that is you. And the exhale, as we soften and surrender, we remember. And then go ahead and take a final breath when you feel like you have a little reprieve, your body feels soft. And then come back, blink your eyes open slowly. Thank you for doing that with me.
Yeah, that was nice.
I really have noticed when I've listened to intuitive flowing kind of podcasts, the most beautiful things and suggestions and learnings come out. And so I don't know that I've done this on my podcast before, but for my listeners today, me and Camille, we know each other. We've talked a little bit. I was a guest on her podcast, but we're just going to kind of flow today and feel into the needs of the listeners. And Camille has a lot to offer. So she's an entrepreneur and a business woman. She's a coach, a CEO of her company. She has a podcast. Is there anything else?
A blog.
A blog, that's right. A blogger, a podcaster, and business coaching, which I have looked into a little bit deeper and just absolutely love what is there and see so many benefits. So I was thinking there were a couple subjects that you guys would love to hear from her on. And first, I do want to ask you, Camille, to tell us a little bit more, a more rounded intro to who you are.
Okay, yeah.
Tell us about your family or something.
Oh, I would love that. Well, first and foremost, I've always been someone who, one of the main values that I tap into and I really feel connected to is learning. I've been a lifelong learner, and that's a big trail behind me of people who identify as educators in the traditional sense and outside of that as well. So I actually went to college to be an educator as well. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a principal turned superintendent. I had family on both sides who were teachers. And what was really fun about that is I did family and consumer science education, which meant I could do 13 preps in junior highs or high schools that pretty much enveloped all of life school. And so that piece of it was so much fun, because when I graduated from college and decided the traditional classroom wasn't for me, within a few years of the pandemic, or it was the recession of 2008, that I lost my job as a mortgage broker. I was actually in mortgage and sales. Wow. And I decided to be at home with my babies. And for always and forever, I've wanted to be a mom. And that is my happiest job. And then once I was there for a few years, I thought, gee, I really miss community. I really miss connecting and teaching. And that's when my blog was born. So it was really interesting to take that journey. And I love coaching and teaching women and really helping them to draw what are values that have been within you forever that can be a part of your motherhood and other pieces of you that really fulfill who you are. And so my kids, just as a way of introduction, I've been married now for 19 years. We just had our 19-year anniversary, which is crazy. I know. I got married as an infant. I was 20, almost 21. So I've almost been married as long as I was single, which is just craziness. And my oldest is 15. He's a boy. I have a daughter who's almost 13 and obsessed with Taylor Swift. We sing it together all the time. And then I have a son who's 9, almost 10, and then a 7-year-old boy. So we have junior high, elementary, and high school. And it's so much fun and so crazy. And I love it.
Yeah. And I love, those were all the perfect ways to describe it. So crazy, so much fun. And I love it.
Yes.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate that. And I also wonder, has the balance changed? So while you've been doing this business, has that balance been like, did you figure it out from the beginning, or did you ever sway one way or the other? Like, how did you figure all this part out? Or was it just like, because of the recession and you lost that job, you dove right into this, like head first?
No, what happened was I actually became a mother in 2008, and that's the same year I lost my job. So it was like, I was in a situation for the first time where I was unhappy with my work environment. And I was very prayerful about a situation I was in. And I said, if I become pregnant soon, I will stick it out, because the insurance was so good. But we knew we wanted to start our family. And it was actually this fateful day where I was miserable. I was getting paid so well, which was fantastic because I was the breadwinner of the family, but I was really unhappy in the situation that I was in. And I remember saying a prayer in the parking lot, and I got a call from the doctor's office. I had gone and done a blood test and found out that I was pregnant. And so I said, I will stay. So I stayed, finished out the pregnancy. I think I paid $20 copay to have this child, which is just crazy. And then within weeks of me having my maternity leave, I got a call from the bank saying, come back for one day, but it's closing, and you'll get a severance for another 9 months. So I was like, sweet. So yeah, it was not on purpose. I mean, I think in God's big perspective of the energy of my life, the flow, it was on purpose. But I didn't necessarily know that timing was going to work out as well as it did. And then within 3 or 4 years of being at home with my children, and after I had my second, that was when I kind of looked around and was like, I love this. I don't want to change that I am inside the home with my children, but I want to do something that fills me in a way that I can feel more myself. Because at that point, blogging became this new thing where people weren't really making money from it, but they were connecting, and it was starting to happen, where it was through the grapevine of 2008, I started a personal blog when my son was born, but it was in 2011 that I'm like, this could be a thing. And then for the next decade, it became this new career that I never saw coming. but I was able to apply my education and background into fueling this business that came to fruition.
Wow. Okay, that makes sense because I do feel like I've heard from a lot of people and I've experienced myself where you kind of have to feel the contrast or the extreme of the other, right? You're in it with the kids, you're fully in there, and you're experiencing the joys that that part of life has to give, but then you do start feeling a little bit of an imbalance or discrepancy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that a lot of people think it's all or nothing, right? Either I'm all in, I have my career and I'm outside the home, or even I'm inside the home, but it's everything, right? It's emotional, it's physical, it's like I'm in the other, office working. And then you feel like the mom guilt, or you feel like you can't fulfill the other part, or you just set it all down, right? And you go the other
Oh,
way,
yeah.
which you know what you're going to feel you're going to feel the other pretty soon. And I just think it's such an important thing to like honor women as, the full spectrum of everything we're capable of and can do, and just the amazing gift and what a lot of women have to offer in other spaces. And that is the biggest question is, can that be done in a fulfilling and supportive way for the woman, in a fulfilling and supportive way for the family, and the things that she thinks are important. And I recognize that that's a sliding scale, right?
Oh,
Each
yeah.
woman needs to decide that for themselves, where they sit on that gradient and what they can participate in, what they're meant to, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no judgment for that. But I do feel like you shine a light on a lot of this middle ground that just isn't really talked about in the way, that people can do it, that you can have. I don't know, maybe I don't want to say you can have your cake and eat it too, or you can have both, but I have found that that is true. And although we're always kind of flowing and kind of fine tuning the balance, thinking that it's not possible, I think is limiting.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I think that for sure, like through the years when I started, I had two kids, and then I went on to have two more, all the while building and growing and figuring it out as I went. And what was really beautiful about being able to work from home is I could push and pull back. And, whether it was having a new baby, pregnancy, nursing, sickness, mental health, whatever it was that was going on in the home, it's such a beautiful thing that there are so many opportunities to be able to be flexible if you can figure a way to do that, which is why I wrote the course 60 Days to VA, because that is, being a virtual assistant is something that I have trained other people to do, so that I kept getting this question of, how can I work from home? How are you able to do that but still be with your kids? And I thought, well, I wouldn't tell you to be a blogger, because that was something that, that ship has kind of sailed,
yeah,
where things are different.
yes,
However, there are so many remote opportunities now where, especially like post-pandemic, people are realizing now more than ever that we can be efficient and we can connect and we can have opportunity to support each other without having to be together, just like we are with this
yeah.
Zoom call. It's like, what a beautiful thing that we can connect with people all over the world. Like it's fascinating to me.
That's so cool. And I was going to ask, like, what are like the top two things you think have done that you've done or implemented that have given you at least the space to be able to flow and pull back and stuff? And I think would one be the VA?
Yes. I mean, so when I first started my blog, I I thought at the time, I was like, I'm going to bring all my best friends and family together, which meant I brought 7 women together to do this blog, not having any clue what that meant or what it would look like. And pretty quickly, I had 3 drop out that were like, this is like a job and we're not getting paid, which was true. We weren't. Like, it was a new business. I had no clue what was happening. And then over the years, it whittled down 4, 3, 2, 1. And as that transition happened and the team of what was being done and produced went down to just me, I actually started to train other people to help be part of my team as independent contractors. And so I was able to maintain and grow without having to like give it up completely, because that's something where when I talk with women or coach women about life balance, we all have different capacities from one week to the next, from one season of our life to the next, and really honoring that and making space for that. It doesn't mean you have to stop, but it does mean a lot of times you need to make adjustments. So yeah, for me, it was, okay, I can't wear the hats of all these people that were here before, but I could train someone else to work with me or hire someone through referral or whatever it was. And that's how I was able to do that. So currently on my team, I have 5 independent contractors, as well as like a web person where if my website shuts down, he's my 911 where I'm like, oh no, like just literally last week, I had someone had gotten into my computer my website, and made it so that if people went to my website, it redirected to an ad. And like, which is a huge piece of my income is ad revenue from the, page views. And
Yeah.
I hurried and messaged him, something's going on. Can you help me? And he helped like block them, do a new password, rewrite the code in, and figure it out quickly. So my biggest thing is, allowing yourself to be able and willing to ask for help, not only in business ventures, but in your personal lives, involving your children, communicating with your spouse, and really embracing the whole of who you are, because there's so much that we have to offer. But I think too often, especially as women, we think it's, like you said, all or nothing, or burning ourselves out so much that we can build up resentment or have no energy left to give to anyone, especially ourselves.
That's amazing. I really especially like that piece about communicating and asking for help, because that transcends business and mommyhood and all of the things, which is like, I have found 90% of the things are alleviated by just coming in and saying, hey guys, I love you. I want to be really present tonight with the family. And I'm working on like 40%, like Brene Brown says. And
Yeah.
so I have got to make a call or fix this thing on the website at 9 p.m. So here's what's happening tonight, and just have that communication, which I think probably when you coach people, they get more of that, right? They get probably more, the practical tips, but also more of like the life management skills, right? Which we just need someone in our corner. I think we need a reminder. And I think it's so, so, so powerful and valuable to have somebody give you permission if you haven't completely learned, or as you're learning to do that for yourself. It's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times, it's asking those questions or to yourself, or having someone to help you to do that, and think, where are the deficits of things that really fill me up? And I was coaching someone yesterday, and we were talking about, well, what is it that you do for you? And what does it look like with your spouse? What would you want to look different? What is it with your children? And what is something you did as a kid that totally lit you up that you are not doing right now? And it's really fun to go through those questions and to reflect on that, because there is so much there that even 15 minutes a day could be a huge difference in filling up a space that's been empty for a long time.
Yeah. And I think that's the misnomer too, is like, it doesn't have to be your whole life or this 8-hour thing. It's like, there are these small moments, quality over quantity. When I was a single mom and I was working 2, or I guess you could call it 3 different businesses, I had one of my therapists / coaches say to me one time, I realize that you're in a place right now where there's going to be compression as you're changing things. But if you can get quality over quantity in, it will kind of take that hum of like just stress, inadequacy, that feeling of I should always be doing something else, and just kind of take it back down. And what she told me to do was just make a connection, like find those things that you like, what's important to you, spending time with your daughter or something. Find 3 times a day where you could get on your knees and look her in the eye and have a conversation. And I thought it would last 15 minutes, but often, especially with a small child, it's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes. But the quantity, like what you're actually getting for that quality in that moment, is more than if you spent 2 hours with them at the park, but kind of like answering your emails, right?
Yes.
Or like doing something else, you still feel unfulfilled. So I love that piece of saying, even if it's 15 minutes a day where you're fulfilling yourself, I feel like that is a true principle. I wonder, do you have like a fun coaching story that was like one of your favorite clients or the biggest transformation or like an easy thing you fixed and it just opened up their world? Like, I kind of want to know what's possible.
That's a really good question. I think one of, oh, well, this is kind of, I could look at it when I sit down and coach with people. We talk about doing time audits. So we really look at the usage of their time and how it's being used and if it really matches up with their values. That's a very significant practice to take. And so this is something anyone listening could do, but to do a time audit, take 24 to 48 hours. And it's almost like keeping a food diary. Like if you were working with a nutritionist or something or a dietitian, and do a time audit and pay attention to how you're spending your time and what you really think is making a difference in the piece of your life and or the productivity of your business or for yourself, whatever it is that where your target goals are and what it is that you're hoping to achieve, and really take a look at how you're using your time. And if a way to kind of cheat this in a way is you can look at the usage of your phone, because sometimes I think we'll get distracted in a way of not realizing how many times we're picking up our phone, the usage of time that we're using doom scrolling as it were, or doing something. I do think that there are times that it's good to have like a restful period, but there's difference between getting lost in it and being like, oh shoot, where did that hour go? Versus, oh, I want to take 15 minutes and connect and do these things with these people, which could be on the same app, but the purpose or the feeling behind it is totally different. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Is that what it is? Like, what are the biggest surprises people find with a time audit? Because I'm kind of nervous to do that.
Yes, for sure.
Is it
For
doom
sure it is.
scrolling?
Yeah, I mean, doom scrolling is a big one and it's easy to do. That's the thing is we have so much easy distraction than we've ever had before in any period of time of ever. Like our attention spans are so much shorter. The way that our brains are being going through content where it's like these 7-second videos where it can give you pretty high dopamine hits, or perhaps something that can make you feel really sad all of a sudden. If it's a news report that you see pop up on your Alexa, and you're like, oh my gosh, people died. And then, oh, by the way, here's the character singing a new song. Like, it's just like our brains are so distracted. So I think that what is really interesting is a big piece of what I do is looking at what you enjoy, what you're good at, and what really moves the needle of reaching that next goal. And sometimes one of the number one things or ahas that I help people discover is just because you're good at it doesn't mean it's important. And that can be hard. And what I mean by that is, one of the things I'll help people do is like to hire an assistant. And that can be emotionally difficult, especially for people who are more, they're used to wearing all the hats and that they're used to controlling the narrative or knowing exactly what's happening, or it's always fear-based in some scale. So allowing them to look at it and say, I know you're really good at this, but is it the best use of your time being the thinker and the innovator and the entrepreneur of this space? Or is this something that you should pass on so that you can be the bigger picture person, right? Mm-hmm. Or sometimes people are doing things that they hate, but they are just so used to doing it that they're like, well, I'll just get it done, even though it like makes them feel miserable. So I think that's the biggest thing is like really looking at what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What lights you up? What is something you could let go? And then also looking at the time audit and finding ways to fit in the quality of time, doing something that fills them over the quantity of just being busy, really taking time to schedule in yourself. And that can be difficult. So I think that that's honestly probably across the board, the most transformative is really holding up that mirror, and it makes you realize that there is time slipping and it doesn't always match up what you really value. And that's where shame or guilt comes in, is when the way you're using your time doesn't line up with your values of what really matters most to you.
I love that. And it's not something that I think you can do it by yourself, but I think it's something that is just lovely to have support,
Mm-hmm.
right? Someone who sees you and wants to help. And I think that can make that realization maybe a little more gentle. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but when I was a personal trainer, there was only 1/3 of the time that people would come in to train because they actually wanted to look better or eat better or change their body. 2/3 of the time it was motivation and accountability and friendship,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just being seen. And that took you the rest of the way. And so I love what you're offering, because in such a beautiful space where I think people suspect that might be what's going on, how do they actually pragmatically like attempt that? And then how do they read the results even? And then how do they find what the solution could be? So I think that's really awesome. And I can definitely see, like, I feel that deep in my soul that that's a constant thing, that I'm always dealing with and struggling with. And so I love that that service is just such a beautiful, authentic offering for you. It's really cool. I do have a question about when you had some difficult health things happen to your son. How did you
Mm-hmm.
balance that in your business? Like, what happened emotionally and like what happened logistically for you in your business? I know that is a common story.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, it was just like a car accident, or you know what I mean? Like, there are some, I think us mommies are always just holding space for that, and it's never the case that something doesn't come up. And for you it was really big, and I was interested in how you navigated that and are probably still navigating it.
Yeah. I think that what's really been interesting, and I had never gone to therapy myself before going to therapy with my children. And it's been really fascinating for me because even before my teenager was struggling, I had a 4-year-old that was struggling. And we noticed a huge landslide in his mental health in relation to his use of screen time. Huge, like violent outbursts, he would say, I want to die in a hole at 4. This is at 4 years old. And it wasn't like he was consuming hours and hours of television a day. It was when his nap time was replaced with screen time. And at the time, I had been using nap time to work. So I was like, oh, well, what's a couple hours of screen time? It's fine because I'm playing with him the rest of the day. And while little brother is sleeping, he can watch a show of his own. But day after day, it was like this huge, huge landslide. And it actually directed my product quite a bit. I wrote a screen time program for parents and kids. And I developed what's called a screen freeze program. And it didn't even sell well. I don't care because it healed my family. And we did like a 30-day fast, and we developed 5 pillars of health, which was communication, watching this, being cognizant of screen time, eating well, sleeping well, and exercise. And so anytime that my child started to be in a struggle space, and this took some time, this isn't even who you're talking about, but this is what I felt like I should share.
I'm glad you're sharing it. I know I was
Yeah.
going to know about this one, but wow.
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
we would go through and I'd say, Kate, let's go through the 5, and we'd count it on our fingers. What have you eaten today? Have you fueled your body? How did you sleep? We need to make sure you get into bed soon. And then communicating about it. How are you feeling? Let's work through this. And one thing that I learned that was really interesting about children in particular is that they don't know how to express themselves and their emotions because they don't have the vocabulary for it yet. So one of our homework assignments during that time was we had a piece of paper that had, and you can find this online, it's like, I don't know, maybe 50 different emotions with little emoji faces of what that emotion feels like. So it could be like embarrassment, frustration, anger, excited, frightened, words that maybe are different from just mad, sad, happy. It's like, what's in between that? And how do I even communicate that? How do I say I'm overwhelmed? Kids don't know. And so one thing that we did as homework was we had this piece of paper, and I would model as a parent and say, today I felt, fill in the blank, let's say excited when, and then I'd have to fill in an example. Today I felt excited when I was able to run this lap that I was working on. I don't know, something like that. But then I'd have to say another one. Today I felt embarrassed when I tripped and fell in front of my friends. And today I felt, so we had to do 3. I had to model 3 and then he had to model 3. And what's really beautiful about that is that children oftentimes feel their emotions in their gut. We know that that's our second brain. And so if they have an upset stomach, or if they're feeling, typically they'll tell you they're feeling sick or that their stomach doesn't feel good because they don't know how to say, I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling scared. It like processes in the belly first. So they'll just tell you they're feeling sick. And so it was through developing vocabulary and communication that I was able to help him kind of work through emotions and come to a healthier place. For my teenager, it was way deeper than that. We had to go into, therapy and medication because it was something that needed to be dealt with medically and emotionally. And it taught me so much patience and understanding. And it was actually about that time where I switched from storytelling in my blogger and creator space to being more of a business coach and podcaster out of respect for my children's stories because they're not mine. And I think that transition of being a creator online and giving them that space was a big piece of my journey too. And so you can see just from those 2 examples, in one scenario, I fueled it to create a service and a product for my audience. But in another, I was like, nope, I'm going to take a detour because like my energy emotionally needs to go here. And my business and my creativity is going to be more focused around women and not so much storytelling of my family. So that kind of gives you examples of what that can look like. But it's been like an ebb and flow the entire time. You just kind of have to go with your gut of like what feels right and what's best for your family.
Yeah. And like you said, you may not have ever premeditated it or knew, like you probably didn't start out as a blogger going, I'm going to start a podcast. It's like you flowed with and were open to the possibilities of what was available to you while honoring the family first. Or a better way to say that is what you felt was important as your purpose and how you wanted to show up first, right?
Yep.
Then letting those things morph and having the faith and the consistency and the will to do that. I love those 2 examples. Thank you for that. And I love when you just share those very authentic personal examples, because then it makes me think, and maybe the listeners think like, what is that for me? What does that look like for me? We were just talking right before this podcast where I have a new direction for me, and I don't know exactly how that will completely evolve in the way I want to show up in this space versus this space. But I think we're on the right track as far as going, something's shifting and changing and coming back to like your ideas of the value and the assessment, and really taking a mirror up to those things. And you've done that. You've exampled that, which is, I think, what makes you such a powerful coach, and friend and seer of that, because you've lived it. So you can look on the outside and you can say, I know what this feels like. It's really beautiful. I love how you're honoring your family, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thank you.
I want to switch gears just a little bit and ask you this question before we run out of time.
Okay. Yeah.
And I love that you kind of touched on it earlier when you were like, I had 7 women and then it slowly started going down in business.
Yep.
I have had a lot of examples over the last 20 years of times when partnering in a business has worked and it has not worked. And I wonder if you have an opinion, because I have read a lot of business books lately that lean one way, that kind of have one idea of running business. And I wonder what your opinion on is having co-founders or partners versus you being the CEO. And that is the name of your podcast, right? Call Me CEO. And so I feel like there might be some gold in here, advice we could pull out of you.
It's funny that you ask this, because currently my sister and I are looking at potentially doing group coaching together. and it's been ruminating and being a possibility for so long. And we will see. I don't know if we keep trying to make it happen, but I feel like partnerships can be so beautiful because they can really play to people's strengths in a way that you are weak like that. And it can be more fun. Like at the end of the day, that it's really feels nice and almost comforting to be like, oh, but this doesn't have to feel as scary because I'm not going it alone. Even with my business now, my husband is my business partner. He does all my finances, and on paper we're 50-50. I tease him sometimes because I'm like, when's the last time you wrote a blog post? And like, because sometimes he has helped me in that way, and most of the time he hasn't, which is fine. But what's interesting too is looking at agreement of operation as well as distribution of what's going in and what's coming out. And typically most businesses don't return a profit for the first 3 years. I mean, some can. There are specific businesses that I help people build, like becoming a virtual assistant, you can turn a profit very quickly. Where with mine, like if you're building a brand or like a product business, you're putting a lot of money in, it's going to be a minute. And so I think having expectations and knowing who is playing what role is very important. One of the things that actually broke down my business at the time that was difficult was after being in business together, 4 of us for, I think it was 3 years, we finally were like, we should probably develop an LLC and do like an agreement, an official agreement of like operating procedures. And it felt very like heavy. Yeah. And so, but it was like, we needed to, like, we were filing taxes. Like it was at a place where we probably should have done it years ago. But it actually got to a place where we had decided to do it evenly each way, even though I was the founder and the brain behind it. I was like, that's fine. I will do it equally. And, but there needed to be a managing partner, someone who, if it came down to a vote, someone has the majority ownership so that they kind of, help tip the scale or whatever. And so I was going to take on 1% more. And that alone upset one of my partners so much that she left. That 1%. And that was a big eye opener to me that I was like, wow, and she actually came back later and said, I am so sorry. She's like, this is bringing out the worst of me. Like, and I don't know why. And it's better for me to step away because she was kind of saying like, I'm acting crazy, and which is too bad, but it was, for whatever reason at that time, it was the best decision in the moment. So going into partnerships, it's really important probably to do that first. Now with how I have my business and I have contractors, independent contractors, I can be very specific about what each of those people do, and they own their own business and I own my own business, and I pay them on time and they're happy and I'm happy. And it's been so much easier. So I don't know. I think that there are beautiful, fantastic, amazing partnerships. I think of like Betty's, for example, my friend Betsy, who owns that business, and her friend who was very like behind the scenes, the numbers, and like very organized. And Betsy was more the creative and marketing and really knew how to like push the product. And that's what's beautiful, is when you really find someone who plays to your weaknesses, that they are their strengths, but you just have to be careful. It's hard. I don't know. I don't know if those examples help, but it's definitely something to go into lightly.
No, I like it. And I love the way you talked about it so beautifully, because I have seen that. And I do have a friend right now who's partnered in business that is kind of a good example of that. But we go to lunch sometimes, and she also does say it's not without its struggles. Like they do get to some of those contrasty places where at the end of the day, she's like, well, I just said, you pick this product because it's not worth our friendship, But there are places where I think it's harder. I think when you said
it is,
it's harder, it's more work. And if the benefit of exactly what you've set up and the strengths and weaknesses are a perfect match and you feel inspired to do it, I've seen that work, but I definitely think in general, what I've seen is it's easier to be your own CEO and work on those independent contractor one-off things. And then the downside to that is, I like what you said, the camaraderie and maybe a little bit of loneliness and fear. You never, whenever I'm doing that, and I've done that for most of my business, I do find myself desiring partnerships for certain periods in my life just because I'm mostly fulfilled by the relationship. And
Yes.
so even though it's never worked great for me in business, I do find myself craving that relationship. And I have found myself asking, where else can I fulfill that relationship need in other ways that doesn't have to keep taking my business on detours?
Right. Yeah. And that's, you know, I can think of examples of good partnerships that I've done, that I've shared on my blog. I share stories of women, mothers building businesses. And one particular partnership that is one of my very first episodes is High Fitness. And their partnership is incredible. We get into a really deep dive of that. Another one is Soar Babes, which is this sorbet company that these women open together, and the way that they work together, and they've made it, it's just fantastic. So I have really amazing examples of that. But I think, like you said, it can be a detour it can be a huge distraction. And that can be difficult because I think it's just getting down into the weeds of like, what is your goal with doing the partnership? And there are ways to make it work, just making sure that you're on the same page. And there have been times I've coached people who were in a partnership, and through a few sessions of coaching, they're like, we want totally different things. And sometimes it takes a third person to come in and kind of walk you through and ask questions to realize that, because you care about that person, you respect them so much, you admire them, you want to work with them, you love them. But sometimes your ideas or what you want to do is just two different storylines, and that's okay. And sometimes you might need someone to help you kind of work through that.
Yeah, I feel it. Yeah, just like a little bit different creation.
Yeah.
If you have just 1 or 2 more minutes for my audience, and especially for people who are, I mentioned this before, kind of started out in maybe the healing arts or healing modalities, or not down the business route right away, but started like loving what they do, kind of like Augmandino type stuff, like doing what they love and loving what they do, but then finding out that this is how they are making their livelihood, right? So I feel like a lot of people who come from where I come from, either personal training or teaching yoga or energy work or, retreating and all these kind of wonderful things, a lot of us get into it because we love it and it helped us, it saved us, it transformed us. So we're paying that forward. But we didn't go down business classes and business route with our coaches and have a plan. A lot of times we're just look up and we're in the middle of business and we have no training. And I think there's some important lessons in that, and a little bit different navigating, but I found out it's not so different. It's not so different from navigating the spiritual space and the business space. And I wonder, because a little bit of both, and I feel like you do such a beautiful job of a well-rounded kind of awareness and coaching. If you had any advice, maybe this is the question. If you had any advice or any this is what you should realize for my listeners who are trying to make a living out of yoga, right? Or a living out of retreating, on the other side of expertise and understanding business so well, what would you have to say to them?
Advice for growing the business, or what piece?
Yeah, I want to say surviving it, growing it, being able to make a living doing it.
Yeah.
Because it can feel a little exacerbating and a little it won't pick up momentum, and it can't go there, right? Because in the nature of teaching what we teach and doing what we do, you have to continue being that. And so if you've gotten yourself off the mark, then you can't really come back to the material, where it's like, if you do own the sorbet company, I feel like you can make choices independent of yourself and your personal growth for a business.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But when you're in it, how do you make it successful? What's some advice for viewing it as a business and your livelihood, and still holding space for yourself to be able to show up as that expert?
This is an interesting question because for some people that I coach, they really have to lean more into their feminine and work with flow and like not be so aggressive about change and production. But I would wonder in this space if maybe some need to lean more into masculine sometimes, of exploring and standing up for themselves in a way of valuing their time and what it is that they're offering in their service and in their business. That can be, so that's something to evaluate within yourself. But one question to ask is, do I have a sturdy foundation of practice for myself, honoring my space so that you can give to others? And then the other question I would ask is there a way that you could create a product that you could sell that doesn't require your physical presence? Because what I see in this field specifically is that so much of it is demanding real-time you. However, mental health, loneliness, meditation, that is a crisis that's happening right now globally. And I believe that there is a specific thing that you could probably produce and create and promote online that would bless so many that you wouldn't necessarily have to be physically there for every single day to offer that transformation. So what does that look like? Is that a video series? Is that a course? Is that a PDF or a book? Is that a live series that you do that also is in complement to something that's digital? I don't know. I think that there are different ways to look at that, but that would probably be, in a wide brush stroke, yeah. I think that's the advice I would give.
Thank you. I actually love that. That kind of lit me up and made me think yeah, there are all those spaces where products are taking the place of me. And I love that when that happens, actually. And I felt that burden when you said that, yeah, it's like me or nothing a lot of times when the opportunities produce themselves. And that is an exhausting piece. So thank you for seeing that. Thank you for offering that. I just love that. I just love you. And I found out you and a lot of people in your family, you must have it in your genes, especially with letting me know your parents are teachers and things.
Oh yeah.
You must have your genes, that gift for helping people in a way that's easy to understand.
Thank you. I'm so blessed I could come to tears thinking about it. Like, my family heritage is so profound and beautiful.
That's so
thank
cool.
you. I'm glad that you know them and love them. Family is everything.
Yeah, I feel that from you. I feel it through the screen from your content and from talking to you live. Is there anything kind of left unsaid on your heart?
I first just thank you for having me. I think that the space that you create and the energy that you give and share with the world is incredible. I'm just grateful to be in this space with you. And for anyone that's listening and feeling a sense of overwhelm, which I think we all do, and wondering what is it that I need, I would just suggest to really, one of the things that I really love to do is to have a joy list that you can grab, or honestly, that's probably on your phone, something that you could do within 5 to 10 minutes that kind of brings you back to a piece of knowing yourself. And it can be really fun or silly or serious. And that tends to be something that I think a lot of us need more than ever, especially as women who are giving and serving and caring for so many people around us, is not to forget yourself and to give yourself that space to really enjoy who you are and honor that goodness and that divinity within you that we started that wonderful meditation with. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzinnyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zinn Yoga, and have a beautiful day. Sat Nam.